Hello and welcome. So as I posted yesterday, if you caught that, we're at the wall today. I wanted to do a wall yoga class. I haven't got a huge amount of space, but as you can see, really you don't need that much. It may mean you have to clear a couple of bits and pieces, but it just gives a totally different perspective when we're working at the wall rather than away from the wall. We have that support, and it also acts as a bit of a guide to let us know where we are in space sometimes. Great, excuse me, I'll hop off here so you can see I've got some padding up here against the wall, and that could be much higher. For those of you who find sitting cross-legged challenging, remember, elevate the hips, get some height up under the hips to give you space to be able to cross the legs. Cushions, blocks, we're going to give you some support. You'll need them to be, I'm about probably 2 inches away from the wall, so it gives you this little bit of space behind for the top of the buttocks to hang over. Excuse me. And then just find your distance, and it's going to be different for everybody. We're going to be moving close to the wall and further away depending on some of the poses we're doing. But for here, I want you to find a nice long spine, and so many of us find it really challenging to sit upright when we're just floating in space. So here we've got the support of the wall, and you can sense how straight and how balanced you are. The sacrum is at the wall behind you, that part of the lower back. Excuse me. The shoulders, I'm bringing those to the wall, and I'm gently trying to bring the tops of my shoulder blades back. So often we get really short and closed in through this front part of the chest, and we don't necessarily feel that when we're away from the wall, but here I can feel it because my upper arms and shoulders are away from the wall. So I'm gently pulling those back, getting this broadness across the front of the chest, and then I'm bringing the back of the head towards the wall. So nice long neck, not jamming it back. If that creates a compression in the throat, just keep the head a little bit away. But here we can get a reference to where we are, how we're sitting. You still want to get a sense of containing the core muscles, and there is this feeling of lifting the lower ribs up away from the hips. So we're still trying to find our nice long spine, but we have a sense of support. So just close the eyes down, soften into the shoulders, and just notice the breath. How does it feel today? Where is the breath moving? Is it more into the upper chest? And can you start to fill that entire container of torso down into the pelvis, into the mid-ribs, and up into the upper chest? With the wall behind us, we also have a nice reference for our breath, because as we breathe in, we're pushed away from the wall a little if we're breathing into the back of the lungs. We haven't got the weight of the body pressing down onto the floor as if we were lying on our back. We would have more weight. Gently, you're just going to tuck your right hand back behind you. You may need to adjust the distance from the wall. Palm's going to face away, and then let that right hand just come in behind you. So again, often when we have to internally rotate to get our arm back, we don't want to stay here with the arm kind of pushing away from the wall. I want you to see if you can start to guide that shoulder blade and top of the arm back towards the wall. Bring the back of the head to the wall. Just pausing here, the hand can come up higher or it can come down lower. Just explore that for a moment. Somewhere in the middle feels great for me. And then without taking the head away from the wall, so you're not sliding the head forward, we're just going to drop the left ear over towards the left shoulder. And exploring along that that right side of the neck and just noticing where you're feeling tension. Positive stress is what we're looking for. So when I say tension, we don't have to think of that as being a negative. We want to put this positive tension and stress into the tissues. And in this pose, it's going to be along the side of the neck. Could even be into the front of the neck, around the scalenes. Often when we get tension in the scalenes, they're responsible for headaches. Down the side of the neck, could be into the front of the chest here because we're pushing that shoulder gently towards the wall behind us. And see if we can just let gravity take over. We know that the spine is staying nice and long and it's just the head tilting because we have the wall as a support and as a reference. And then see if you can soften the arm that's behind you. We don't have to work to keep that arm in place because the body's leaning it against the wall. Two more breaths. Notice where the breath moves, which parts of the body expand, and is it different in the parts of the body that we're adding some tension? Now to move out of this shape, I want you just to keep your shoulders at the wall and the torso at the wall, but just let the chin start to gently roll down towards the chest. And then lean forward and just let that right hand slide a little lower, bring it out. It can feel really tender as it comes out. Lean back against the wall and just notice, feel into this upper right quadrant, up into the upper arm and into the front of the chest and shoulder, and just notice what feels different here in comparison to how things felt a moment ago, and also what feels different compared to the left. Change the cross of the legs. If that feels good for you, to take a little bit of movement between sides. We're going to cross the opposite leg in front this time, and probably that's going to feel like the odd way. Usually we go to our preference side or our favourite way unconsciously. So just pause, notice what changed. Does changing the cross of the legs make any difference? Remember, you've got the option, you could have a blanket wrapped around under the shins, you could have blocks under the knees or on the feet to give you support, some cushions, some padding. Make sure that you're comfortable even when we are challenging the tissues. And then the left hand is just going to tuck back. Notice my shoulder is rolling forward. This is internal rotation. And we want to slide that hand back behind us. And then we want to start to invite this shoulder back towards the wall. This side for me, it's a little harder to get there. My shoulder blade tends to want to poke into the wall. I've got to tuck it under. And then just pause. Feel into that. That could be enough. Could be plenty going on. Keeping the head at the wall, but let the chin slide forward. Slowly start to ear to shoulder, not turning the head, not looking down. Being curious about what's going on along that left side of the neck. Imagine that you're directing the breath into any area where there's perhaps a sense of pull or a slight discomfort. And remember, we're looking for sensation, but we don't want it to be forced. We don't want it to be sharp and painful. And we want to be able to soften into it and breathe into it. It should feel like something good's happening rather than something's about to kind of ping. And the body will start to invite you in as space opens up. Maybe you just tend to naturally drop a little more towards the right. You might find there's a pull around the jaw area and into some of the muscles of the face as well. All that connective tissue wraps in around the muscles. It's what becomes our ligaments and tendons. So our jaw, we've got huge big tendons and ligaments connecting the upper and lower jaw, connecting the muscles into the jaw, into the throat. Super slow again, just drop the chin towards the chest, keep the shoulders against the wall, and then bring the head back up. Leaning forward just to unhook that arm from behind you, nice and slow. And then just pause. Turn the light on. Again, just take a moment, there's no hurry to go too fast. Just to feel into what's going on, what's left over once you shift out of the pose. A yin practice can be really challenging in that we do things so slowly, we take time. And in the world we're generally asked to rush and to race and to hurry up. And yin, don't hurry up, slow down. Allow the nervous system to come back into its rest and repair, that branch of the nervous system called the parasympathetic nervous system. We're bombarded constantly with things that are often overstimulating, that send our body into whether it's conscious or unconscious panic. And then slowly moving, we go to the next shape here. We're going to just bring the soles of the feet together and away from us. And again, remember you've got the option, lots of props could come into the outer legs. We could find there's some compression into the top of the thigh here, where the leg attaches into the torso, and if that feels too much, please pop something under the legs and lift them away from the floor a little. And we're just going to lift the spine nice and long. Keep your sacrum at the wall, your back body, the lower part of the spine, and start to lean forward. So anyone with any lower back issues, keep the spine nice and long and don't let the spine round, just let the chin drop towards the chest. And just try this on for everybody at this point. Just let the chin drop down towards the chest. Soften the shoulders, resist the urge to pull yourself forward. Just give the head a tiny, tiny little kind of nod and a little bit of movement side to side. Just feel into that. Release the muscles at the back of the neck. Feel the weight of the head. And then bring the awareness down, right down towards the lower back, to the part of the body that's against the wall. And slowly, slowly lift the head back up and just lift it up slowly and then drop it down again. Do this a few times. And fascia is one sheet throughout the body. It wraps around and weaves its way through tissues and around bones. So the fascia at the base of the skull is attached to the fascia at the base of the spine. It's attached to the fascia at the base of the foot. So the movements that we do in one part of the body is going to impact another part. So here you can just leave the head heavy, or if you've got no lower back problem and you have space, you could start to let yourself round forward. So you could bring your hands into prayer position and rest the forehead onto the thumbs. You could cover your eyes and make a little covering for your eyes. Again, you could have blocks under the elbows. You could have a bolster or a stack of cushions in front of you to kind of rest yourself onto. Just make sure whatever you're supporting the head with, that you're not lifting up away from that tension. Let the weight of the head really be part of the pose. If it feels okay to hang free, let it hang. Here we open up into the back body when we're rounding forward. So those of you who are rounding, you might feel more of a pull into the fascial lines across the shoulders, down into the lower back. Check again, so that you're not tensing or gripping the neck, and also the jaw or scrunching the eyes. Let the next couple of exhales sigh out through the mouth. Two more breaths. And then slowly start to make your way back towards a straight spine, and then start to bring your spine upright, moving the back to the wall. Just pausing here. And then support the knees. Bring the soles of the feet out in front of you. The legs a little flex and point, a little bounce. So we're going to turn around and take those shapes now with our feet on the wall and our spine supported by the floor. And there we're going to feel a different perspective in how we get a pull of gravity. And for those of you who find cross-legged challenging or butterfly shape challenging, sitting upright, you could find it completely different when we change perspective. So just shift your blocks off to one side. Often to turn, you need to bring your hips nice and close to the wall. So turn to one side and then shift the hips a little forward, and then you spin your legs up the wall. And we're going to have to move back and forward away from the wall depending on what's going on for us. So just take a moment here. The sitting bones are probably a couple of inches for me away from the wall, and I may have to adjust that depending on how things go. So just pause here in this position, which we often do in the middle of the room with the block under the hips, into this legs up the wall or waterfall pose, where we allow the fluids of the legs to drain back towards the pelvis, our lymph system. They drain back up towards the throat. The lymph relies on gravity or movement to move, unlike the heart that has a pump. The lymph doesn't. But also here we're letting the heart take a break, because it doesn't have to force the blood back up to the heart. The blood's draining back towards the heart here. And then feel the perspective here of the weight of the torso and the spine down onto the floor. And then we're just going to tuck the left foot in and the right foot over the top, coming into a cross-legged position. And you could bring your hands and just let them rest onto the thighs for support. Same position we were in when we were seated. but now we've got a change of perspective. See if you can unclench the glutes, and you may need to move further away from the wall. We'll just stay here for about 4 more breaths, and we'll change the cross of the legs. Just note which one's on top. Unwrap, straighten the legs up. And then if you did do the left side first, we're going to take the right side in, then the left one's on top. Watch that you're not lifting the tailbone up away from the floor, that you're not clenching into the glutes. Let the torso and the pelvis feel really heavy. Feel the weight of the sacrum bone on the floor, like we do when we go into Shavasana. So you can see that you're not clenching or gripping into the top of the quads. Hands could be there just as a support to hold the legs. If they feel like they want to pull up towards you, that's okay too. But if there's space for you, just to hold them there. You're not grasping, pushing, forcing. Two more breaths. Unwrap the legs, just let the legs go straight up, rest them against the wall. Feeling that relief often and that sense of support. We've got the legs supported here, we've got the spine supported. And then we're going to bring the soles of the feet together and let the feet slide down towards the pelvis to your own degree. So some of you might want to move further away from the wall. Some of you might want to shimmy a little closer to the wall. Hands again connect as a really nice support to either hold the knees or onto the thighs, or the hands can rest just onto the inner side of the leg. And watch the tendency for the pelvis to want to lift up. Let the hips feel heavy. Now, often gravity is going to start to allow the feet to slide closer to the pelvis. If you don't need the support of the arms, it's also quite nice to just bring them up over the head, take them into a goalpost shape. Just thinking about how this shape perhaps differs for you when you're lying and supported by the wall as opposed to sitting upright. there anywhere you could soften a little more? Check again with the forehead, the jaw, the throat. Notice where your breath is moving. Can you let the breath come all the way down into the belly? And fill from bottom to top, right up into the armpits. Using the wall is often much more accessible for anyone with knee issues because we haven't got the body weight against the knees and compressing. So if the arms are up overhead, just gently bring them back alongside, and then we'll just start to unwrap the legs. You draw the knees towards each other and then take the feet up the wall, and it can feel tender. If it feels good for you to take a little bit of movement, you can kind of wag the feet from side to side. You can point or flex. And then we're going to let the feet slide down the wall a little bit wider than the hips. Not much more though, so a little wider than the sit bones. And here we're in our yogi style squat, which usually we're doing the other way, either sitting onto a block normally or just floating in space with our hips compressing towards the floor and our feet pressing to the floor. For many of us, we need support under the heels when we do this as a squat, or we need support under the sit bones. So again here, we don't have to worry about those supports because we can't fall. We're already on the floor. And just like in many of our other poses, some poses can feel a lot, others not so much. Some quite sensational, some quite pleasurable, and some a little ho-hum. So just be okay with whatever's going on as long as it's not pain. And just notice the quality of the thoughts in the mind when something is perhaps more challenging. How do you manage that? Do you start spiraling off into stories in your mind? Start to fidget or want to escape? Or are you able to access some of the tools like the breath and the sensation? If the pose is a little kind of average and boring for you, what goes on there? Do you start to plan or to ponder or to wonder what's for dinner, what's next in the day? You start to think that there's not really much point in the pose, why are we doing this? Just see if you can just settle in and accept whatever's going on for you. Accept pain. What we're ideally looking for, regardless of whether it's challenging or whether it's super easy, is that we find this sweet spot, this place where we can quiet the mind and drop into kind of a sense of nothingness, even through challenge. And now we're going to start to widen the feet and widen the knees. So for those of you who are finding this shape pretty comfortable, maybe now you might start to feel some challenge. So we're going to widen the feet, and the feet kind of stay in line with the knees. The hands could rest palms facing up on the inside of the legs if you want to add a little bit more weight. Again, this is frog pose, and we normally do this pose turned facing the ground. The hands could also be just resting onto the outer legs or onto the knees. Whichever position you've chosen for the arms, just make sure that the arms are soft. If you've got the arms inside the legs, it's not to push, it's just adding another layer of tension, like a little weight. And if things ease off, you can keep widening the knees away from the center line, and the toes can turn out. Feet are on the wall. Get into the adductor muscles, the inner leg muscles here. But also just watch out for that compression on the outer hip for some of you, depending on the placement of your hip sockets. If there feels like a pinch or a hard feeling around that outer hip, then just back off a little. We can't move past most compressions, tension, the inner legs. Here in this pose, I'm feeling a lot of tension on the inside of the legs. Tension suggests that over time we could change that with practice. But compressions, once we've met bone on bone, we don't want to push that any further. Notice the breath, notice the jaw. Remembering that we want to find our edge, our area of sensation, and that could be tension or compression. Or is it a place that we feel something, not too much, not too little, just enough. Then we want to see if we can commit to stillness, only adjusting if it's too much or too little. And then we stay for time. Time being that key ingredient. Three more breaths. What can you soften? Where can you deepen for 3 more breaths? If you've got the hands or the arms resting to the inside of the thighs, just lift them away and notice what changes. How does taking the arms away change the sensation on the inner leg? And then we're going to slowly, super slow, start to guide the legs back towards each other. Oh yeah. And then reach the legs up the wall. Just pausing here. So the wall can often make poses feel less intense or more intense than their original kind of shape if we were doing them not on the wall. So that one, for me, a little more intense there. There's nowhere to escape. Can't shift the hips back or forward like we often do when we're face down. Now, most of us are probably going to find we need to move the body a little away from the wall, so you can put the feet on the wall, just rock from side to side, and everyone's going to vary here as to how far or how close you need to be. So straighten the left leg up the wall, and then you're just going to hug the right leg in towards you. You could do that behind the thigh or around the shin. Just pausing here We can press between the belly and the thigh. Check out the breath here. It's a reference to see if the breath is moving right down into the belly. And then we're going to cross that right ankle just above the left knee here. Anyone with knee issues, please flex the toes of that right foot so that foot becomes like a standing foot. We could all do that to get into the next part of the shape, just to keep the knee protected, but if it feels okay for you, you can relax the foot once you get there. And then we're going to start to bend that left leg and bringing the sole of the foot to the floor. Now the hips often will want to lift up away from the floor, and that would be a sign perhaps that you need to move away from the wall a little. And this is our reclined pigeon pose, but we've got our hands free. Often we're pulling that left leg in towards us by threading the hands around. We don't have to do that here, so you could rest the hands onto the body, you could bring them up over the head, and we're going to get some feedback from that right buttock. Nice big stretch for the piriformis muscle, into the IT band even, and the outer group of the hamstring. So if it feels too much, you move away from the wall a little, or you start to straighten that left leg up the wall a little. If you need more, you move closer to the wall and you bend that left knee a little more. And you can also explore going deeper by coming up onto the toes of that left foot, or bringing the foot back to the wall. Keep the hips heavy. In this shape, often we can really feel a lot going on in the glute. Remember, not too much, not too little, just enough. And sending the breath down deep into that area as if you're rubbing a massage balm into that area. A nice liniment or a lavender oil to calm things down. The wall, for me, makes this much more challenging again, in that there's nowhere to escape. Often when we're lying on our back and we're hugging the knee in, we bypass sensation by widening or adjusting the body. We lean a lot more to one side or the other, whereas when we take this shape, we can't escape it. Check that you're not tensing the shoulders or gripping the jaw. For a lot of us, when we're hugging the knee in towards the chest using the arms, that can be a little uncomfortable in the arms or the shoulders. The head will often try to lift up away from the floor. So here again, the floor is supported, the spine is resting completely down. Two more breaths. And let those exhales come out through the mouth. And then start to slide that left foot back up the wall. Oh yeah. hug that right leg back in towards you. And then straighten that leg as well. And pause. Just notice what's going on when you come out of the shape. And then we'll take that over to the other side. So cross that left, first of all, hug that left leg in towards you. No hurry, slow down, Emma. Just hug it in. Feel that compression between the thigh and the belly. And let that guide you to see how deep you're taking the breath, how full are you getting your breath down into that lower part of the lungs. Soften the shoulders, letting gravity take over. And just in this shape, noticing where are we compressing, which parts of the body are pressing against each other, or are we closing towards each other? And then notice which parts of the body we're lengthening the tissue, adding tension. And then just to come into the shape, flex that left foot so the foot becomes like a standing foot, widen the left knee out and cross the ankle above that right knee. If this feels a lot here already, maybe you move further away from the wall. Maybe you just stay here. Or for those of you who have got some space, you can start to slide that right foot down the wall. And then option to soften the foot if you've got no knee issue. Otherwise, keep that foot flexed. If the pelvis is lifting up away from the floor, move yourself a little further away from the wall, or take the leg a little further up the wall. Sometimes we move into a shape and straight away there's a lot of feedback. Other times it can take a few breaths before we start to feel where the tug and the tissues are, and it can change throughout the time frame that we're in the pose. Sometimes it gets more intense, sometimes it eases off, and it's there that you want to really listen and decide whether it's not too much, it's not too little, and it's just enough. Not forcing or muscling our way into the poses, but also we want to feel something. And you'll be the first to know. You'll know whether it's too much, and you'll know whether it's too little. If your personality is that of someone who pushes and strives and has to go hard all the time, then maybe you need to just back away a little bit. And if your personality is that you avoid feeling too much sensation, maybe you need to deepen a little. Come onto the toes of that right foot, lifting the heel away if you want to explore moving a little deeper without going closer to the wall. Keep the left leg nice and soft and passive, and you can just engage the right leg a little to be curious about that. Just a couple more breaths. And super slow, start to straighten that right leg out. Unravel the left one, just draw it in towards you for a breath. And then support it to straighten it up the wall. Often needs a little help, creaking and groaning along the way. Now I'm going to get you to move back a little closer to the wall, and that will depend if you've moved a long way away from the wall, but just moving a little closer, so just sway side to side, walk yourself back towards the wall. I want to get us into a bit of a quad stretch, and this will be one where some of you will feel a lot and some not so much, so depending on what's going on for your knees, and you may need to just spin around and just sit up to watch where I'm heading here with this one. Often when we're looking at stretching the quad and we're sitting onto the foot, that we can compress into the knee, and for people with knee problems or ankle issues, it can be too much. So in this one here, we're going to bring the shin to the wall. We're taking our foot across on a diagonal so that the top of the foot is across over towards the left side, and here I've got my entire shin pressing to the wall. I'm just going to spin around and show you that away from the wall. I've got my leg out, this foot is bent, the foot has come across, and my shin is on the wall. So imagine that's the wall. So here we can widen, we can play around with finding the right shape for ourselves, and as I said, this may or may not be a lot for you, but don't worry, for those of you who want more, we'll go there soon enough. So left leg up the wall, you can widen that left leg a little bit, the right one bends, the knee widens out to the side, and we bring that left foot across slightly, and then you can actually even play around with widening that left leg out a little further. If you need to keep a hold of the right toes with the left hand, you could do that. But for some, this will be a lot of stretch into the quad, a lot of opening into the knee. Others not so much, but regardless, just pause and stay with it. Again, if it's painful or too much, move away from the wall a little bit to take some of that compression out around the knee. And just settle in. There's a deep compression into the back of the right leg where those tissues are pressing together, and we've got a lot of blood supply into the back of the leg and behind the knee. So here we're giving a nice compression for that, so when we unravel, we get a nice flush of blood back into those areas. We're getting length into the shin, into the ankle, around the knee, and possibly for some of us into the quad. And you can play around with widening that knee out wider. The wider it goes, you'll get back into the adductors. You maybe get a little more into the quad. And if you do that, you may find that the foot slides back behind its own sit bone rather than over towards the left side. So you decide, you'll know. And that's what I love about yin, is that to get the sensation, everybody may look completely different. We're not all trying to be a clone of one pose, one shape, because we're not clones, we're different. We're different on the inside, we're different on the outside. Same anatomy, for most of us, same number of bones, varying slightly, same organs. But we're all different. They're a different shape, they're a different length. We have different issues. We've had different problems throughout our life, injuries, accidents, emotions. So we're not the same. So why should we all look the same in a pose? And then gently bring that leg back. I want you to be really mindful of the knee here. So don't kind of flick the leg open. Gently draw the knee in towards you. Take that leg up the wall. And these poses that for some don't feel a lot, it's when you come out you realize how much you've been doing. And then we'll just take that to the other side. So bend the left leg, take the foot across towards the right side, and that shin and ankle and top of the foot come towards the wall. Just pausing here. You can adjust the right leg any amount, and that knee can stay more upright. It can start to drop over towards the side. So normally if we're in this position, in a seated position, we've got our entire body weight pressing down into the knee, into the ankle. So this could feel much more accessible. Notice the breath. Feel the weight of the body resting onto the floor. The spine completely supported. The wall is a really great practice for anyone that's got any disc issues or spinal problems, because here we're keeping the spine nice and straight. Slowly start to make your way out of that. Now for anyone who has got any knee issues, then I would suggest that you repeat that again as we go into this sort of more intense version of a quad stretch. So for those of you who want more, we're going to come over into a kneeling position, and you're going to want your padding under the knee here, and you might want plenty of padding, and you could even bring your padding up so that it starts to come up the wall a little bit. Now this can take a little bit of fluffing around to get into, and we did the right leg, so we're going to start with the right leg. So I want you to have your blocks out in front. You're going to lean forward and slide your right shin back to the wall. So I'll turn this way just so you can see. So I'm in this shape. And then to get into the quads a little more, I want you to turn your blocks a little higher. Make sure they're nice and stable, and you're going to slide that left leg forward. So here we're getting into a dragon pose, but with a foot up the wall, and then just sink into that. So for someone with knee issues, this might be too much on the knee. So here, chances are that you're going to feel much more into the quad. We get into the psoas, into the hip flexor. Hands can stay down onto the blocks to start with, and then just let the chin drop towards the chest. We get that fascial back line as well as the front line. As poses start to become more challenging, check in and see that you're not holding the breath, and even start to extend the exhale. Make it a little longer. When we extend the exhale, we invite that branch of rest and repair in the nervous system. Now this could be plenty, but if you're looking for a little more in the quad, you can start to come upright, and you can even start to press your hips back towards the wall. Whew. I want you, even though we're quite active and quite yang in the front leg, I want you to completely let go of squeezing the muscles on that right leg. Which means ungripping the glute, ungripping the quad, but we have to stay active in this front leg to keep us upright. Anytime it's too much or you want to back out of it, leaning forward will do that. Just a couple more breaths. We won't hold this one for long. You know that dragons are challenging, and this adds a whole nother dimension. Now to come out, you need to just come back down towards the floor. It can be a little challenging. So if you can inch that left foot back and slide the right knee forward. If you're lying down onto your back and have taken that quad stretch that we did originally, just start to unravel. Just pause here. If you're sitting onto your heels, you can notice the difference between left and right, perhaps. And then we'll take that straight over to the other side. So if you're on your back, tuck this time your left leg over towards the right hip. If you're joining me in the quad stretch, sliding that left shin to the wall, the knee goes back towards the wall. Usually you need a bit more height just to help to support you, so really make sure you're stable. Press the hands into the floor and then slide that right leg forward. And you can keep your hands on the blocks. We need some effort in the arms to keep us upright. We need to stay stable in that front leg, but completely soften the rest. Top of the hip and into the top of the quad here often is where we'll feel this in our hip flexor and deep into the psoas. We get into the obliques and the lower abdominal muscles as well. Don't forget to breathe here. If it feels really heated, then you can, it's called Shatali breath. You can either breathe in with your tongue curled, or you can breathe in with your teeth together. And you'll feel the breath was a little cooler. And of course, there's always our lion's breath, where we stick the tongue out and breathe out that heat. So option if you want to try and see if there's any more space in the left quad. You can start to come upright. Oof. And instantly the tendency here is to grip because it's feeling a lot. So soften, completely let go of the tension, the holding, the gripping in that left quad. You have to use some effort in this front leg to keep you upright. Two more breaths. And then slowly, even though you perhaps want to come out of it quickly, drop the hips down, create enough space that you can start to slide that front foot back, slide the left knee forward. If you're laying on your back still, just start to take the legs straight up the wall, and that's where we're all going to join you. So for those of you that have been with me here in this kind of fiery dragon, remember bringing the side of the hip to the wall, sliding forward, and then spinning the legs up It's an easier way to get there. So here with the legs up the wall, the closer to the wall we are, the more we're going to feel in the hamstrings. So just for a moment, I want you to feel that in the hamstrings, because we've stretched the quads. Let's release the quads now and just a little stretch into the back of the legs. So just for a moment, just flex the toes down towards the knees and then point the toes up towards the ceiling. And if your hands are on the quads, you can feel that movement in the quads. You could even bring the hands to the back of the legs and just feel into that lengthening and contracting. And then release any effort and move yourself into a position where your legs are up the wall, but they're not feeling like there's a huge amount of tension into the back of the legs. The legs can roll open. You could have the feet a little further apart. Just find what works for you. And we'll rest the hands onto the body here. So one hand onto the heart, one on the belly. If you've got blocks, you could put your blocks under the elbows here so that the arms do rest onto something. Excuse my bell ringing. And again, coming back to that absolute sense of support, being held by the earth beneath the spine, held by the wall against the feet and the legs. Let gravity take over here. Feel the rise and fall of the belly, the broadening of the rib cage, front to back, left to right. The rise and fall of the hand over the heart. And the weight of the shoulders, the weight of the arms, the head. Allowing the muscles of the spine and the spinal column to completely relax, fully supported. And then slowly just start to bring that bit of movement back into the legs. If you've got time and you want to stay for longer, totally stay there. And then just draw the knees in towards you, making your way over onto a side. And then back into our upright position. Just for a moment, taking that cross of the legs, and you can move away from the wall here. Notice how it feels now, what's changed. And then just connect the hands in front of the heart, thumbs resting in the center of the chest. Find that nice long spine again. Crown of the head, just floating above, directly over the bowl of the pelvis. Namaste. I hope you enjoyed that change of perspective, and the wall I think is a great tool and a prop that most of us can find somewhere in our house. So enjoy whatever's next in your day, and we'll see you soon.